Uchiha's Rebellion, The Rise of Ruohuo. Like, share and subscribe. Episode 41. Please call me a war hero from now on. The Kingdom of Earth is surrounded by mountains and has solid rocks as a natural barrier. This gives Earth Country and Awagakure a strong defensive advantage in military terms. But the disadvantages are also obvious. The strong defensive advantage was not built by Awagakure on its own, it was a natural condition. Being able to withstand foreign enemies will also lead to blocked information and inconvenient circulation of resources. After the Third Ninja War, Inoki would hire outside village forces to keep up with current events in the ninja world and complete some secret activities. But at this time, it is obvious that Inoki has chosen a simpler and more crude path: go to war. The essence of war is plunder. Loot the land and plunder resources. Anyway, Awagakure is not afraid of war, so I will retreat into the territory of Earth Country and fight a defensive war. But what impressed Ruohuo most deeply was not Awagakure's warlike attribute. It's Awagakure's super tactic, the violent soldier-style war mode. It is said that the Third Raikage single-handedly defeated 10,000 Gangakure ninjas and died of exhaustion after 3 days of bloody fighting. He was truly a hero. But Awagakure was able to dispatch so many ninjas in the late stages of the war when he was fighting Konoha and Kumogakure on both sides, which was strange enough in itself. But it is precisely because of the tactics of violent soldiers. The more ninjas on the front lines, the greater the need for supplies. Konoha started the mission of destroying Kanabi Bridge twice because of this. It's such a big bridge. Ruohuo stood on the top of the mountain, chewing Bingliang pills, looking down at the rock bridge between the two mountains, somewhat amazed. The entire bridge seems to be embedded between two mountains. Below it is a turbulent river. The water is so fast and fierce that even the ninjas of Kirigakure would not dare to step on it at will. There are many Awagakure ninjas guarding both sides of the bridge. Some Awagakure are still wrapped in gauze, and traces of previous battles can still be seen on the bridge deck. It seems that the White Fang has retreated and gone back to the village to be scolded. Did you choose to give up when you saw your teammates couldn't hold on in the middle of the fight? It's quite courageous. Ruohuo murmured during the high-altitude reconnaissance. Compared to the mission performed by Minato, Awagakure only had 3 jonin guarding here, and due to lack of information, Kakashi was identified as the White Fang, which led to a series of stories. The war has just started now, and Awagakure has enough manpower, so it is natural that such a strategic location is heavily guarded. White Fang's task of blowing up the bridge is naturally a bit difficult. But whether it is the mission performed by Minato, or the mission performed by the White Fang, it's certainly not that easy to sneak into this place and destroy this bridge. Unless the attacker can fly and has enough detonating charms on him. I didn't expect that the task of blowing up the bridge would fall into my hands. It's a pity that the water will not break the wave, otherwise this war hero will basically get it for nothing. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows. Danzo, a veteran thief, wants to kill him and tries to convince Orochimaru to join the glorious fight against Uchiha. Orochimaru temporarily rejected Danzo, and borrowed his hand to burn a root ninja of the same level as Aburame Ryoma. Although it seems that Orochimaru doesn't want to cooperate with Danzo yet. But Wakahara knew that once Orochimaru failed to run for Hokage, the two of them might have to wear the same pants within minutes. When the time comes, his knife will naturally become a victim. Orochimaru and Danzo are actually chess players, and they will compete in the next game of Hokage competition plus eradication of Uchiha. Ruohuo only wants to develop and not play chess. His current idea is to be the best chess piece. The identity of the future Uchiha clan leader plus the direct disciple of the 4th generation of the Hokage lineage may not be close to the best. But if you want to add Konoha War Hero and Konoha White Fang's Redeemer, that's a different matter. TSK. It seems that these detonating symbols cannot be taken back and sold for money. Ruohuo counted the detonating charms, including those given by Orochimaru and those seized along the way. There were about 20 in total. It's not much, but if the blasting site is found well, it will be enough to make the bridge fall. And he can keep all the military exploits for himself. Because Wan Shi's target was too big, he rushed over in advance. Before leaving, he used the Great Fireball to simulate the stink of the Fire Dragon bullet and taunted Wan Shi. At this moment, there should only be a few mountains left before Wan Shi reaches the battlefield. Traveling on land, coupled with Wan Shi's bad temper, will definitely cause a lot of noise on the road, and many Awagakure ninjas should go to support them. Just like Minato's tactics in the future. Minato creates noise to attract firepower, and Kakashi's squad is responsible for blowing up the bridge. The difference is that Minato's tactics were reversed due to the human errors of Iwagakure and Uchiha Madara. But this situation does not exist at all between him and Orochimaru. There's no way anyone would really leave Orochimaru alone, the dignified Konoha Sannin Cold Lord, the provisional successor of the 4th Hokage and the future Uchiha clan leader teacher, and risk their lives to protect this bridge, right? No way, right? Ruohuo is gearing up. Chakra consumption has almost been replenished. Although the travel time was shortened to less than an hour, the power of the fire dragon was maintained all the way, and the high-altitude air flow had a great impact on this technique. It was a high-power trip, and the continuous consumption was indeed not low. But it's not a big problem. Chewing on soldiers' food pills all the way, the continuous consumption has been offset a lot, and now he has recovered to a certain extent. The movement not far away became louder and louder. The Iwagakure ninjas on the bridge have been dispatched one after another, and the ordinary people who are transporting supplies have made an emergency retreat. In less than 5 minutes, about 70% of the ninjas on the bridge had disappeared, and they all went to the front line to stop Orochimaru. Only half of them remained on basic alert. It's finally time for the big wolf to appear. Ruohuo grinned, stepped onto the fire dragon, adjusted his stance to a surfing posture, lowered the dragon's head, and then launched a dive. Young ones. My big wolf is back again. Ouch. The fire dragon rushed down, and when the height dropped to be parallel to the canopy bridge, it forced a turn, got under the bridge to the other side, and finally returned to the far left end of the bridge, which is the exit end of Iwagakure's delivery of supplies. Where did the kid come from? Why does this kid seem to have come down from the sky? What kind of creature is under him? Why does it look so much like ninjutsu? This kid has the Uchiha clan emblem on him. He is a ninja from the Uchiha clan of Konoha. Obviously, no matter how little information Iwagakure has, they still know about Konoha and Uchiha. This has to start with a certain ninja Shura driving a Susanna and bullying a boy named Inoki. Listen up, the ninja who destroyed this bridge is named Uchiha Wakahu. Ruohuo's hands were ready to form seals, and the fire dragon at his feet also came around to his side, and opened its bloody mouth. Fire style, dragon flame double spray. Ode. 2 dragon flames, one on the left and one on the right, covered the entire bridge. This is such a crappy name, it might as well be called a double-barreled flamethrower. The main body really doesn't know how to name it. Shadow Clone hung on the bridge and silently attached the detonating talisman. But just when Shadow Clone was almost finished posting. What the hell? The main body on the bridge suddenly screamed strangely. What happened? Shadow Clone finished posting the last detonating talisman and jumped up from under the bridge. Then he saw a burly figure, wearing red armor, steaming all over his body, and even rescued several Iwagakure ninjas. Konoha's Uchiha Wakahu, very good, I remember your name, boy. The burly man in armor put down the Iwagakure ninja and waved to him. You guys should retreat first and leave this place to me. I will avenge those 2 victims. Bang bang bang. Shadow Clone clapped continuously, turned to look at the main body, and pointed at the bridge below. Okay, we have spawned the hidden boss now, but there should be no boss reward. Come on. Episode 42. Which Uchiha would be afraid of Jinchuriki? Han, 5 Tails Jinchuriki. He was extremely powerful and made countless contributions to Iwagakure during the Third Ninja War. Because of his boil-style abilities, he was also called the Steam Ninja. It is indeed a boss. Shadow Clone made the right choice. Facing such an opponent, he didn't need Naruto's wave of people tactics, so he could naturally recover some chakra points. So why did I meet 5 Tails Jinchuriki in this place? I shouldn't have left the teacher alone, ugh. If the fire has gathered chakra on the soles of its feet, prepare to retreat. The information fed back by Shadow Clone, apart from a little panic, also had a countdown to the detonating talisman. 3 seconds, 2 seconds. Whoosh. Ruohuo retreated suddenly, and Han's body was filled with steam. He was about to pursue, but suddenly stopped and retreated. The next second, boom. Gravel flew and dust flew everywhere. 10 detonating symbols exploded at the same time, enough to crack mountains and crack rocks. The stone bridge at the end of Han's feet was suddenly smashed into a huge gap. Only the hardest parts on both sides were barely connected. This was not over yet. Ruohuo's fire dragon bomb went around under the bridge the moment the explosion sounded, and forcibly activated the detonating talisman with high temperature. Boom. Another fixed point blasting, but this time, the effect will be slightly worse. There are still many rocks supporting the bridge connection. Without waiting for Ruohuo to assess how much effort is needed to completely destroy it, the Han on the other side was already covered in white steam and launched a surprise attack. I can't let you continue to destroy the bridge any longer, boy. Han shouted in a low voice with his magnetic baritone, very fast, and the steam pulled out a long white curtain behind him. Who are you trying to scare? Ruohuo clapped his hands, fire style, the art of singing with dragon flames. 4 flaming dragon heads blocked Han's hiding space from 4 angles. Ruohuo's 3 Magatama locked Han's every move. But Han didn't hesitate, he crossed his arms in front of him, his whole body was steaming, and he even put on a layer of red-tailed beast chakra coat, and he actually managed to bear this ninjutsu. In fact, it only counts as holding a quarter. After all, you only need to hold one of the 4 fireballs. This is the disadvantage of this technique, and the reason why Ruohuo felt that this technique was unfair at the time. It's okay to abuse vegetables, but when it comes to tough situations, it's not as effective as his great fireball. Fire style fire fist. Ruohuo spits out a great fireball and condenses into a giant fist of flames, slamming into Han in one-tail mode. Don't you want me to get close? Han doesn't plan to bear it this time. Even if he has the tailed beast chakra coat, it doesn't mean he can ignore the high temperature of fire style. Moreover, if this fire style collides with the bridge deck, it may cause impact to the bridge. Many gaps were blown out at the bridge connections on both sides, and Han did not dare to take risks. Whoosh! In an instant, Han rushed to the edge of the bridge, supported himself with one hand and crossed to the side of the bridge. With his body parallel to the bridge deck, he attacked Ruohuo from the side road. Ruohuo didn't intend to accept the move. He immediately terminated the release of the great fireball, clapped his hands, rushed to the other side of the bridge, and jumped violently. Ode. The flaming dragon condensed at the feet of Ruohuo, and lifted up Ruohuo directly into the sky. Air supremacy, get. When Han returned to the bridge, he saw Ruohuo standing on a fire dragon in midair. He frowned for a moment and began to think about what to do next. Ruohuo looked into the distance. Wanshi and Orochimaru must have already encountered the Iwagakure ninja who went to intercept them. The shouts and roars came through Iwagakure's defenses. The teacher is coming soon. You have to hurry up. Wakahui has no intention of letting Orochimaru take away the battle glory. Whether it's Kanabi Bridge or the boss of this level. 5 Tails Jinchuriki? Which Uchiha would be afraid of Jinchuriki? Immediately form a seal with both hands, chakra condenses, crazily. The last time he faced a few rats at the roots, because they kept hiding, Ruohuo used 50 times the amount of chakra to create an artificial small sun. Thinking about it now, I was still impulsive at the time. How can you spend so much money to deal with a few rats? That technique is so cool, at least it should be reserved for opponents like 5 Tails Jinchuriki. Sorry, I consumed a lot of chakra all the way here. Otherwise, you might be able to see a bigger sun. Ruohuo muttered, then his eyes heated up, and chakra vented wildly. Fire style, the great fire world. This time it's 70 times the amount of chakra. 5 times the base power increase, and 70 times the ninjutsu scale increase. Sea-level fire style, great fireball once again has its highlight moment. This time the target is Kanabi Bridge, plus 5 Tails Jinchuriki. Boom. That's too late. Han's pupils shrank and he gave up resistance immediately. This was not a technique he could bear in this state. He immediately gave up guarding the bridge and flashed directly to the rock wall of the mountain next to him, running all the way, using the mountain to resist the super-large fire style. Boom. Like a fireball from an artificial sun, it hit the bridge. The shattered rock bridge on both sides could no longer bear it. With a loud noise, the bridge collapsed and fell into the roaring river below. The Kanabi Bridge fell. But Ruohuo didn't stop. With just a moment of hesitation, he controlled the fire dragon to dive, heading straight towards the falling fireball. What is he doing? After evading Fire Style's initial killing time, Han immediately turned back. But this time, the tailed beast chakra coat on his body is more intense, and 2 chakra tails appear behind him. 2-tail mode. Although this state may not necessarily be able to resist Fire Style at that scale, Han doesn't think that boy can use it twice in a row. The Kanabi Bridge has been destroyed, and how to save this important supply line is not what Han needs to consider. What he has to do now is to defeat the enemy. Looking at the Uchiha boy diving toward the fireball, Han made a quick decision and gathered strength in his legs. Although he didn't know what this young man wanted to do, Han believed that this was the best time for him to capture his enemy. He has no flying ability. Once this boy leaves him, the difficulty of chasing him will increase significantly. The Iwagakure ninjas couldn't stop this boy, otherwise they wouldn't have been attacked by him all the way here, and even blew up the Canopy Bridge. Boil style. Han's chakra began to boil, all concentrated in his legs, and with a fierce kick, a big hole was created from the mountain, and the whole person rushed towards Ruohuo like a cannonball. At the same time, steam began to emit from the armor on Han's left arm, and chakra condensed during the sprint. If this punch could hit Ruohuo, life or death would be unpredictable. But I am an Uchiha, Mr. Five Tails Jinchuriki. Seeing that Han's fist was about to hit his face, Ruohuo, who was pressing the great fireball 70 max with one hand, suddenly turned his head and grinned at Han. The moment Han's fist hits him, Sharingan Genjutsu activates. Puff. Ruohuo's body turned into flames. It's not Shadow Clone. Shadow Clone doesn't have fire effects. It's not a fire clone. The fire clone cannot use the full power of Sharingan Genjutsu. It's just a simple substitute technique, the Great Fireball 70 Max, controlled by Ruohuo, which only gives Ruohuo a distance of less than 1 meter. At this moment, Ruohuo was already standing on top of the fireball. Han temporarily lost control of his body, and his body crossed the flames under the inertia, still rushing forward. But it has been locked by Ruohuo's 3 Magatama Sharingan. Snapped. Ruohuo clasped his hands together and controlled the flames under his feet. From the fireball that had previously been filled with most of Ruohuo's chakra, fire dragons emerged from it, and then blasted away in the direction of Han. Fire-style Fire Dragons Killing Formation. Episode 43. Kokuo. Take a good look at who I am. At this time, Orochimaru is on his way riding a snake. Rumble. Fire dragons were born from the fireballs and launched endless bombardments against Han. Ruohuo drew out 70 times the chakra contained in the great fireball, without wasting any of it, and it all hit Han's body. Boom. 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 Fire dragons rushed towards Han. Han had already been forcibly restored to consciousness when he encountered the bombing for the first time. But he didn't have any room to dodge, so he could only curl up and try his best to mobilize the tailed beast chakra's defense, but it was of no avail. The tailed beast chakra coat does have powerful defensive capabilities. But under the bombardment of fire style on this scale, Han, who is only in the two-tailed mode, cannot stand at all. Boom. Ruohuo controlled the remaining flames, turned into 2 huge fire dragons, and made the final bombardment. After the bombing, he once again used the remaining power of the fire dragon to activate ninjutsu, condensing a high-temperature fire prison. This sea-level water-style water prison technique, after mutating into fire-style ninjutsu, is no longer a trick to trap enemies. Instead, it turned into an offensive ninjutsu like an incinerator. A bit weak. Looking at Han, who was enveloped in flames and hanging in midair, Ruohuo gasped for breath and stuffed a Bing Liang pill into his mouth. This soldier's food pill was provided by Orochimaru. It is not poisonous and has a very good effect. If one pill is completely digested, it can restore about 20% of his chakra. So the so-called steam ninja is a little hushy who can only activate the two-tailed mode at this time? If you just bring it back to Konoha, you should be qualified to join Anbu, right? Han is not a perfect Jinchuriki. In the Han dynasty during this period, it seemed that even the power of tailed beasts could only be mobilized to a limited extent. Ruohuo himself didn't expect that it would be so easy to subdue this Jinchuriki. Uchiha is indeed the nemesis of ordinary Jinchuriki and tailed beasts. So is this the suppressive power of the immortal eyes on tailed beasts? He has already begun to think about what his Mangekyo will be. The original plan was just to be a war hero. After all, he supported White Fan from thousands of miles away and completed the S-level mission that White Fan failed to complete. The combat achievements are all his alone. Orochimaru is at best a support that attracts firepower. But now I have cleared another hidden boss and captured a 5 tails Jinchuriki. With Ruohuo's political vision. If he is a superior like 3rd generation Miwa Danzo, then you can now consider whether this Uchiha poses a certain threat to Konoha. There is a high probability that they will be wary of him, and income from Anbu should only be a basic operation. Hey, I plan to gain more experience on the battlefield for a while. Are you going to start Mangekyo so soon? This is not a worry that I should have at my age. Ruohuo touched his chin. By the way, should we find a way to hide this guy? If the Uchiha clan members become Jinchuriki, the system should also determine the strength of the adult clan members, right? Ruohuo raised his eyebrows. Don't tell me, it seems to be true. But it definitely won't work this time. He doesn't know how to extract the tailed beast chakra, and it's not realistic to go to the land of rain to find Nagato now. It would be a good idea to release 5 tails directly, but he doesn't know how to decode it now. Let's exchange it for military achievements this time. Maybe we will have thousands of flowers soon, huh? Ruohuo blinked. He found that white smoke had begun to rise from the fire cell. Oh no, it's not white smoke, it seems to be steam. This explosion progress bar is too long. Ruohuo muttered and controlled the fire dragon bomb to retreat quickly. Just as Ruohuo expected, Han in the fire prison had lost consciousness, and Five Tails Kokuo, who sensed the danger, obviously did not want to die with Jinchuriki, so he fought back on behalf of Han. Boom! The hot steam dispersed the fire prison. Five Tails Jinchuriki Han lost consciousness and entered Three Tails mode, but his body began to fall. Boom! Han in Three Tails mode fell into the water and splashed a lot of water, but he was not washed away by the rushing water. Instead, he stood on the water and screamed at Ruohuo in midair. Roar! The roar echoed through the sky. Ruohuo's face was expressionless, because he suddenly missed his younger brother Tuzi. If Obito were here, I don't know whether he would be frightened and cry, or yell back. The voice is amazing. Wakayama Magatama once again locked onto Han in Three Tails mode, or Kokuo in Three Tails mode to be precise, and now Han's body is temporarily controlled by Kokuo. Tailed beasts are powerful. Used as a war weapon by major villages, it has unparalleled destructive power. At the same time, the tailed beast is also weak. Ruohuo heard a saying in his previous life. The tailed beast is the divided 10 tails chakra, only the will, not the soul. So Sharingan Genjutsu hits it accurately. Speaking of which, I am blessed with the power of Indra. Can these tailed beasts recognize me? Ruohuo suddenly thought of such a question. But the next second. Roar! Kokuo in Three Tails mode roared again, and facing an aerial unit like Ruohuo, he immediately relied on instinct to figure out the best battle plan. Open your mouth, charge up, chakra 3 to 7, the tailed beast Jade starts to charge. But Ruohuo didn't panic at all. No matter how powerful the tailed beast Jade was, it was useless if he couldn't hit it. He immediately launched a dive, and while the tailed beast Jade had not yet finished condensing, he closed the distance and prepared to launch Genjutsu. At the same time, he also roared. Take a good look at who I am. The other party didn't respond and fired a tailed beast Jade. Good guy. Ruohuo quickly controlled the flying direction of the fire dragon and narrowly escaped this shot. Boom! The tailed beast Jade hit the mountain on Ruohuo, causing a violent explosion, and countless rocks began to slide down. But Ruohuo just glanced back, and suddenly the alarm bell rang in his heart. Looking back suddenly, I saw that Kokuo in Three Tails mode had already launched a sprint and charged up to jump over. Ruohuo hurriedly controlled the fire dragon to pull it up. Kokuo in the Three Tail mode hit the air, landed hard again, then raised his head and charged up the tailed beast Jade again. Is it because now we only have animal instincts and no rational reasons? Ruohuo thought about it for a moment, then decisively chose to distance himself and began to browse his B-level ninjutsu reserves. Originally, I planned to accumulate more ninjutsu in the future, and then select the most suitable B-level main skill according to the specific situation. But right now, this Five Tails is a bit cranky. If he wanted to get close and activate Genjutsu, he would be in trouble if he got hit. So in order to help Kokuo calm down, he might as well recognize his chakra logo. If the fire feels. In order to complete the experiment here, he needs to determine his B-level main skills in advance. Episode 44. Main skills: Shadow Clone, Five Tails Unblocked. Wakahuo's B-level ninjutsu reserves are not too large, and most of them are native fire style. And they are more practical. Needless to say, the native fire style is known for its power. The fire, water, dragon bullet he has been using now is also a B-level skill. So it's just a matter of choosing between a powerful fire extinguisher and a water dragon bomb. Although he chose in advance, Ruohuo didn't want to suffer too much. After being extinguished, the B-level ninjutsu is known as the most notorious one. A large part of the reason is due to Uchiha Madara's record. The fire, water, dragon bomb is Ruohuo's current flying vehicle, and it is currently equipped with ship-based machine guns and ship-based flamethrowers, and ship-based rockets are still under development. It's a pity that there are no special entries for these two. Like the first two entries of the sea-level main skill, Great Fireball, they both increase power and reduce consumption. Even the increase ratio is the same, increasing the power by 300% and reducing the consumption by 90%, which is the basic increase of the main skill. It can be done with 1.5 times more chakra, but it feels unnecessary. Ruohuo is not very willing. Without the increase in Sage Jutsu, the upper limit of fire style is Amaterasu, which he gave up once. He will be able to solve the chakra problem sooner or later, and sooner or later this increase will become worthless to him. In contrast, the special entries that can be triggered by the main skill are what Ruohuo values the most. Ruohuo quickly switched to other B skills. It's all Orochimaru's fault for taking him out on a mission in such a hurry. I really forgot to check first on the way. I don't have any other key techniques. My B-level ninjutsu is still too little. Huh? Ruohuo blinked, and he really discovered a little treasure. B-level main skill shadow clone technique, pre-test, create a physical shadow clone that can share memory with the main body and fight on its behalf. Main skill increase 1, shadow clone's anti-hit ability is 300%, and the buff bonus can be shared with the host. When the main body is hit, 80% of the damage suffered will be borne by shadow clone. Main skill limit 1, after upgrading to the main skill, the upper limit of the skill's use will be locked at 1, and it will enjoy a 1-minute cooling effect. Main skill limitation 2, after upgrading to the main skill, the maximum amount of chakra this skill can carry is 20% of the host. Why didn't I discover you earlier, dear? 3 entries, 2 restrictions, but both can be ignored. After all, he can also learn multiple shadow clone techniques. Ruohuo confirmed this technique almost without hesitation. Not only did he confirm this technique, but a series of tactics also popped up in his mind. For example, first save 180 shadow clone, and then go out and spend them as you like. Or various shadow clone pathfinding, after all, it has 300% resistance to attack. Sure enough, the entry is the essence of the main skill. Ruohuo is extremely excited. Even if shadow clone cannot share the buff increase, it can be called a magical skill based on the other 2 entries alone. Is it because shadow clone has no way to increase its power, so it gave so many entries? Whoosh! A jet of black-tailed beast jade passed by Ruohuo's left side, setting off a gust of wind, and ended up on the mountain not far away. Boom! The power of the tailed beast jade never disappoints, and the sound of the explosion shook the sky. Ruohuo calmed down a lot in an instant, and there was a rampaging tailed beast following behind him. Then let's find a way to calm this guy down first. Ruohuo glanced back, only to find that Han had completely transformed into a half-tailed beast at this moment. His skin had been replaced by black and red chakra, and 5 tails had appeared behind him. He was sprinting all the way with the help of the rocks, chasing him like 10,000 snakes, and his speed was extremely fast. This is going to break the seal. Ruohuo's expression was weird. If the tailed beast in Jinchuriki's body broke through the seal, Jinchuriki would die immediately. This is also the risk of becoming a Jinchuriki, and it is the only way for a tailed beast to escape the bondage of being bound to a Jinchuriki. Kokuo is 5 tails. Han is obviously not a perfect Jinchuriki, and his current relationship with Kokuo is probably not that good either. Kokuo saw the hope of breaking through the seal, and naturally, he would not show mercy. Although Han can still see the human form now, judging from the 5 tails behind him. It should be only a matter of time before Kokuo breaks through the seal. Just in time to test the strength of Shadow Clone. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows and immediately formed a seal to use his treasure Shadow Clone. How does it feel? Well, you'll find out later. Shadow Clone pinched his arm and looked at the half-tailed beast man who was chasing after him. By the way, do you want to try practicing 8 gates Duanjia? Shadow Clone suddenly said, 80% of the damage is transferred. Does it feel like opening 8 gates is fine? That makes sense, you go ahead. Ruohuo kicked Shadow Clone off the fire dragon. Then the muscles all over the body tensed up, preparing to welcome the painful memory that was about to return. I saw that Shadow Clone was ready to die in midair. He adjusted his body and shrank into a ball as much as possible, using his knees and elbows to block his vitals. Then, snapped. The half-tailed beast turned man in berserk state, slapped him casually. Call out. Boom. Shadow Clone is embedded directly into the wall next to it. But it didn't disappear. With 3 times the resistance to blows, Shadow Clone can still stand strong even if it suffers such a blow. He also gave a thumbs up. There's something. A Shadow Clone that's harder than the main body? Ruohuo swallowed his saliva, although the Shadow Clone was restricted to have a maximum of 20% of the chakra of the body. But when his chakra limit is raised later, and he adds a thick layer of armor to himself, then Shadow Clone. Isn't it walking sideways? Roar. Suddenly, the half-tailed beast man who was chasing suddenly stopped and let out a deafening roar. This roar is still angry, but it carries a burst of excitement and joy. Roar. There was another loud roar, but the voice was not as hoarse and rough as before. It no longer sounded like an angry roar of a human being who had lost his mind. The part of the beast in the voice was clearer. Ruohuo kept moving forward, looked back, and suddenly the corner of his eye twitched. I saw the half-tailed beast Han standing on all fours with his head facing the sky, while scarlet chakra poured out crazily from his 7 holes, and a huge dog-like creature gathered in front of him. Ruohuo has seen this scene before. The blackened version of Tuzi once did the same thing to Kushina. In the end, 9 Tails regained its freedom for a few episodes, then was split into 2 and sealed again. Roar. There was another roar, but all that was left was the joy of seeing the light of day again. 5 Tails Kokuo completely broke out of the seal. But it did not immediately look for the figure in the sky, but turned its head and looked behind it. There, Han's body was motionless, obviously dead. Boom. Kokuo stepped on it and crushed it several times. Doesn't it feel good to be sealed? Ruohuo's voice suddenly appeared. You should follow me from now on. The ninja world in this era is really too chaotic. Boom. Kokuo kicked down again and directly trampled the Shadow Clone into the soil. But Shadow Clone didn't give in, he even made a seal. Fire style, the fire is extinguished. The high temperature impact on the soles of his feet made Kokuo stagger. In his anger, he ignored another boy riding a dragon who had already rushed in front of him. Look into my eyes, Kokuo. Have you forgotten who I am? Episode 45. Teacher, this is my new partner, 5 Tails. Boom. Following Shadow Clone 1, while Kokuo was completely unblocked, Shadow Clone 2 summoned by Wakahuo was also stepped into the ground. Ruohuo was flying in the sky, staring at Kokuo, and suddenly felt a little tricky. He doesn't have much chakra to begin with, and Shadow Clone number 2 only has enough to activate Sharingan Genjutsu once, but the effect. Is it because I haven't turned on Mangekyo yet? Ruohuo frowned, suddenly raised his fingers to the sky, and said silently. I am willing to join Konoha route and serve only Danzo-sama from now on. Useless. I am willing to join Anbu and shine for Konoha from now on. Well, it's no use. There is obviously no chance of temporarily activating Mangekyo. Orochimaru may still be able to try if he is present, but will Kokuo wait with him? Human, why do you know my real name? Just when Ruohuo was hesitating whether to stud, Kokuo suddenly turned around and looked at Ruohuo in the sky. At this moment, one-tailed beast looked at each other. This is perfect timing. Wakahuo has always wanted to activate Sharingan Genjutsu to control Kokuo, and at this moment, Kokuo gave Wakahuo this opportunity. But Ruohuo didn't want it. Don't ask, if you ask, Indra will disdain you. It seems that the power I have awakened now is too weak. Look into my eyes, Kokuo. Ruohuo folded his hands on his chest and stood condescendingly, maintaining the arrogance that an Indra should have. Do you really have no memory at all? Kokuo didn't respond. Of course, it didn't fire the tailed beast Jade. It stared at Ruohuo's eyes with doubts in its eyes, as if it was confirming something. Ruohuo just waited. No one knows the name of the tailed beast unless a human can make the tailed beast recognize it and tell it personally. This was what he had thought before, thinking that Kokuo would be able to save face after being unblocked. Unexpectedly, Shadow Clone 2 was photographed directly into the soil. But now it seems that being able to call Kokuo by name is obviously useful. At this time. Boom. The restlessness in the distance is getting closer. From the time he destroyed the Kanabi Bridge to the complete unblocking of Kokuo, it didn't take long, but it was enough for Orochimaru to break through the blockade and come over. Kokuo still looked thoughtful. Ruohuo felt that he needed to remind him. I recognized your chakra, Kokuo. I never thought that people in this era would steal your power in this way. Huh, that's really sad. Hearing this, Kokuo's eyes finally relaxed a little. Those long-standing memories were finally awakened, and looking into the eyes of this human boy, the familiar feeling became clearer. Are you, Indra? It's down there. Ruohuo couldn't help but give Five Tails Kokuo a thumbs up. He was about to say something when he heard Kokuo ask in confusion. But why, don't you grow up? Ruohuo's face darkened. No. I remember you grew up, we all grew up, but you. Kokuo said as he recalled. Ruohuo's expression gradually became a little strange. Kokuo's memory seems a little confusing? Is it because the lockdown has just been lifted? It doesn't matter, just know Indra's chakra. Kokuo. Look into my eyes. Ruohuo shouted loudly, and the 3 Magatama were running at full power. 3 Magatama suddenly appeared in Kokuo's eyes. Sharingan Genjutsu was officially achieved. I am Indra, I have awakened from reincarnation. You must listen carefully to what I say next. Kokuo, you and I both come from the same era. I rescued you. You should work with me to re-establish order for this world. Azura is wrong. His weakness will only plunge the world into chaos. Only I can bring light to this world. Before I regained my strength, you stayed with me and helped me keep the secret, do you understand? While Kokuo had just released the seal, he was still in a certain state of chaos. Wakahuo took the opportunity to activate mouth release, supplemented by Indra Chakra and Sharingan Genjutsu, and combined it into Bealton mouth, which was very effective. You are Indra, child of the Sage of 6 Paths. I remembered, have you awakened from reincarnation, Indra? You saved me. Kokuo seems to have sobered up a lot, especially after feeling Wakahui's Sharingan eye power. This has been personally certified by Indra Chakra and is guaranteed to be genuine. Ruohuo breathed a sigh of relief. The next step is to slowly convince Kokuo so that Kokuo can serve Uchiha with peace of mind. Although it would be more convenient to use Sharingan control. But the perfect Jinchuriki is definitely stronger than the rampaging tailed beast. I just don't know what the senior officials will think after Kokuo returns to Konoha. No matter what they think. It's wartime now. Do these guys dare to start a war with Uchiha? Correct. Ruohuo suddenly thought of something and continued to activate Bai Shiansui, saying, Kokuo, after my observation of this world during this period, I have found the locations of the other 8-tailed beasts. Most of them are sealed in human bodies. Among them, Kurama's Jinchuriki is the most powerful. When I'm not around you from now on, there are some people you must pay attention to, especially 9-Tails Jinchuriki. She is a descendant of Azura and is good at sealing. Don't mess with her for the time being. Now. Orochimaru is still on his way to Kanabi Bridge. If fire could fly, it could cross most terrains. Although Wanshi can burrow into the ground, the closer to the destination, the harder the rocks on the ground become, causing great inconvenience to Wanshi's ability to burrow into the ground. And these damn humans, can't they line up and deliver them to Master Wanshi's mouth? Boom. Another detonating talisman. Why do these damn humans keep throwing it at its nostrils? The sound over there seems to have stopped. Orochimaru looked into the distance, his eyes slightly worried. Shua Majuan's distress signal was sent 2 days ago. Support has not arrived yet. He should have left. He didn't know exactly what the child was doing, but what was certain was that those loud noises must be related to the child. And these Yanin also heard those sounds, but they had no intention of returning to defense. Are you confident enough in Kanabihashi's defense? Or was it the order given to them by the top management of Iwagakure to stop them? Can't delay it any longer. Orochimaru made a decision. Although the child has the ability to fly, it shouldn't be difficult to escape. But Orochimaru is not sure whether Iwagakure has any countermeasures. At least, according to the information Orochimaru knows, Iwagakure's third Sechikage also possesses the art of flying. Lord Wanshi, I will leave this place to you for now. Orochimaru holds the pheasant sword and stretches out his long tongue to lick his cheek. Konoha Lingjuan is ready to go on a killing spree. You only need to hold on for 10 minutes. Next time we meet, I will give you double, Orochimaru hadn't finished speaking when he saw a huge creature suddenly appear on the rocky mountain in the distance, running towards this side with 5 tails swaying behind him. This body type. 5 tails. Orochimaru's pupil shrank. So the movement over there just now was caused by 5 tails Jinchuriki? Tailed beast Jade? Orochimaru's heartbeat accelerated, and more than 30 escape plans instinctively appeared in his mind. At the same time, I immediately realized a problem. Five Tails Jinchuriki appears, near Ruohuo. Look. It's Five Tails. It's Lord Han here. Third generation Sama actually asked Han-sama to support us. Leave 2 classes with me and limit Orochimaru. Everyone else. Disperse. Just leave the battlefield to Master Han. Wan Shi also noticed the huge figure. That's Five Tails Jinchuriki? The main reason is that the scene of Five Tails running wildly is too shocking. It is so huge and extremely fast, with sand and rocks splashing behind it, and white steam spraying from its nostrils. And the incomparable chakra, it's hard not to notice. Although I didn't get to eat what I wanted most, I've eaten enough tributes today, Orochimaru. Wan Shi's tone was a little cruel. Orochimaru immediately realized that this evil psychic beast was preparing to escape. Indeed so. After running all the way here, they had to drill through hard rocks from time to time, which consumed a lot of Wan Shi's chakra. After being besieged by these Awagakure ninjas for so long, Wan Shi was almost at the limit. In this state, it is obviously unrealistic to want it to deal with Five Tails. But Wan Shi still has professional ethics. Before I lift the psychic spell, I can try to send you off the battlefield. But next time we meet, you need to prepare 500, no. 1,000 sacrifices for me, how about that? There is integrity, but not much. And Orochimaru didn't have time to think about it. Iwagakure's Five Tails Jinchuriki joined the battlefield, and was able to achieve such a high level of compatibility with Five Tails. He had no other choice but to retreat. Not good. Wan Shi suddenly roared, and without saying a word, he took Orochimaru and rushed towards the hole he had just drilled into. Orochimaru was also shocked when he saw Five Tails suddenly stopped halfway up the mountain, facing the sky with its mouth wide open, chakra condensing crazily. Hey! Orochimaru. Are these humans from the same faction as the Five Tails Jinchuriki? Wan Shi ran away like crazy and didn't forget to ask. Indeed. Orochimaru also felt that it was a bit outrageous. If he wanted to launch the tailed beast Jade, he would have to at least wait for the Iwagakure ninja to retreat, right? You just don't care about the life and death of the ninja from the same village and want to blow him up. Why is this? Boom. The tailed beast Tama was finally launched and landed on the battlefield, but together with the Iwagakure ninjas, it blew up Iwagakure's defenses to pieces. Wan Snake didn't dare to stop and sprinted towards the holes he drilled when he came. These holes have now become escape passages for him and Orochimaru. But Wan Shi's speed was still a little slower. After running all the way, I was already a little tired, not to mention that Five Tails Kokuo is good at running and sprinting. It seems I have to change my contractor, Orochimaru. Looking at the Five Tails that crashed down in front of them, blocking the way forward, Wan Shi said in a cruel tone. But he hasn't waited for it to release the channeling. Teacher, I have caught up with you. A familiar and hateful voice sounded. I saw Ruohuo jumping up from Five Tails' neck, standing on Five Tails' head, holding Five Tails' horns with one hand, and carrying a corpse wearing red armor with the other. Teacher, let me introduce, this is my new partner, Five Tails. Episode 46. It is a peace-loving tailed beast and is not willing to take action against humans. Kokuo is in excellent condition. The whole body is snow white, resembling a dog or a pony, the body is slender and strong, and its appearance ranks among the top 3 in the world of tailed beasts. He is also 65 m tall, which is taller than any other building in Konoha. Wakahara stands on top of Kokuo's head and talks to Orochimaru, needing to look down. Orochimaru tilted his head. Looking from a distance, the student who was sentenced to death by him just 2 minutes ago was now standing vibrantly on top of Five Tails, with the former Five Tails Jinchuriki being held in his hands. So, what exactly happened? This question occupied Orochimaru's thoughts. This kid can fly, very fast, over mountains, across defense lines, deep into rocky and hidden places, and then looking back. Why did you come out riding Five Tails? And he was also carrying the body of Five Tails Jinchuriki? Did this kid defeat Five Tails Jinchuriki? How did he do it? Could there be an error in Five Tails Jinchuriki's information, and he is actually a terminally ill old man? You can't commit suicide in front of this child. And once Jinchuriki dies, shouldn't the tailed beast also? Wakahokuin. Orochimaru had too many shocks and too many questions. But he just spoke. Roar. Five Tails Kokuo let out a roar at Orochimaru that was enough to make the mountains tremble. Puff. Wanshi immediately lifted the psychic spell and turned into a white smoke and fled back to Lonely Cave. Boom! Orochimaru was also hit by the sonic impact, which was like a substance, and flew backwards, hitting the rock 10 meters behind him. Puff! A mouthful of old blood spurted out from Orochimaru's mouth, and 2 traces of blood flowed from his nostrils and ears. Facing Five Tails Kokuo's roar, the unprepared Orochimaru was seriously injured. Okay, it would be disrespectful to yell anymore. Wakahuo used his mind to stop Kokuo, and then the roar stopped. Teacher, my new partner has just ended his dark and sealed time, and he is still a little uncomfortable with it. Wakaka said to Orochimaru, don't worry, Five Tails doesn't mean anything malicious, it's just a little panicked. Teacher, please say hello to my new friend, and he will stop yelling at you from now on. Orochimaru stood up in embarrassment, holding on to the rock, looking at Ruohuo from a distance with a complicated expression. He didn't hear clearly what Ruohuo said. The distance was already very far, and his ears buzzed again. His eardrums must have been shattered. But Orochimaru was the chief student of the ninja school back then, and had a solid theoretical foundation, including the skill of lip reading. Although he couldn't hear it, Orochimaru still understood clearly what Wakaki meant. Wakeo-kun. Orochimaru spat out another mouthful of blood and felt a blockage in his chest. This new partner of yours is very strong. Orochimaru held the rock with one hand and extended his other hand to give a thumbs up. He lowered his head and calmed down for a while, then he finally calmed down a little. He raised his head again, barely regaining half of his elegance and calmness, and smiled at Five Tails. Hello, Five Tails. Orochimaru forced a smile and said, I am this child's teacher, Orochimaru. I am glad that you can become this child's partner. Five Tails Kokuo puffed out his nostrils in response. Indra, why did you change your name? Five Tails Kokuo's voice appeared in Ruohuo's mind, there is also this human being. He is hypocritical, and I don't like him. He has the potential to become the only wise man in this era, and he is very important to my plan. The development of every era requires wise people, Kokuo. Ruohuo responded with his mind, moreover, I didn't change my name, but I awakened part of the memory in reincarnation. The Indra who once was me, and the Uchiha Ruohuo is also me now. Don't be too entangled, Kokuo. Five Tails Kokuo was silent for a moment. It seems that the long reincarnation has changed you a lot, Indra. This is completely believed. After having a certain chakra connection with Ruohuo, Five Tails has completely recognized the imprint of Indra in Ruohuo's chakra. So although Ruohuo is different from the Indra in Five Tails' memory, it can still be accepted subjectively. It's like childhood. No matter how you change when you grow up, once your identity is confirmed, it will feel normal. Wakahoku-in. Orochimaru interrupted the communication between one Tailmon and pointed at the group of dark figures on the other side of the mountain. It seems we have to leave. The ninjas of Iwagakure probably won't welcome us too much. After saying that, he looked at Ruohuo again and said with a smile, can you ask your partner to fire another tailed beast jade? I think it will be happy to do so. Hearing this, Ruohuo was really moved. Look at the dark Iwagakure ninjas. How many soldiers will be eliminated with this tailed beast jade? You shouldn't be able to brush up your battle merits or anything like that until they fly? No, teacher. Ruohuo suppressed Qin Bing's thoughts, frowned, shook his head, and said, my partner is a peace-loving tailed beast. He is not very willing to take action against humans. The Kingdom of Earth is also its former habitat. It doesn't really want to destroy the environment. Military exploits, and so on, to put it bluntly, it is work performance. Iwagakure is an enemy of Konoha, and it's not Uchiha's, so it has nothing to do with him. The war in the ninja world will last for several years, so Wakagaku has no intention of asking Iwagakure to surrender. Isn't this cheaper for Konoha? Orochimaru fell silent. So what happened to the tailed beast jade just now? However, as soon as this question came out, Ruohuo blocked it again. And it was just rescued by me, and is still a little weak now. Just now I saw that the teacher was in danger. For my sake, it reluctantly used the least powerful tailed beast jade to help the teacher out. This also makes it weaker now, and its condition is not very good. Orochimaru fell silent again. Weak? He doesn't think so. A roar shook his internal organs and made him deaf. Do you call this weakness? However, the tailed beast jade did hit the Iwagakure position, which Orochimaru had discovered before. Then we can't stay long, Lord Ruohuo. Orochimaru didn't hesitate, and the smile on his face returned to his calmness. Okay, then teacher, please call your partners out as soon as possible. Ruohuo said, it didn't catch up with me just now, I can give him another chance. The calmness on Orochimaru's face returned again. Episode 47. Boil Style, Strange Power, Little Amaterasu? Orochimaru finally changed to a big white snake as a means of transportation. All the snakes ignored him. Orochimaru also gave up the idea of riding 5 tails with Wakaki. Wakaki just rode 5 tails and ran away. This will be the second side on the battlefield today. The boy rode a snow-white 5-tails dog and horse and ran wildly, crossing the mountains and crossing the sea of people. Orochimaru, on the other hand, took a shortcut by relying on the burrow that the snakes had drilled all the way. Although he was quickly thrown away, with 5 tails attracting the attention of the Iwagakure ninja, Orochimaru's escape journey was calm. 5 tails appears, but Jinchuriki is not Han. This bad news was quickly spread back to Iwagakure village. Inoki, who was studying the map while floating in the air, fell down on the spot. Waste, 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 waste. Light, 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 light. But being helped up by the summoned ninja, Inoki felt a little dizzy again. What did you just say? Say it again. Inoki said weakly. 5 tails appeared in full form on the mountain in front of Kanobi Bridge, attacked the ninja who intercepted Orochimaru, and is now escaping towards Konoha. The messenger ninja paused, gritted his teeth and said angrily, Master Han, it has been confirmed that he has been sacrificed. Inoki's eyes darkened. 3rd generation Sama. 3rd generation Sama. Cheer up. Come here. Medical class. Medical class. Mr. 3rd generation has passed away. Inoki was so angry that he was temporarily comatose. But soon, the Iwagakure Frontline Combat Command Center took over the Tsuchikage building, and Inoki's son Huangtu made a prompt decision and issued the highest order to all units on the Iwagakure battlefield. Suspend operations against Iwagakure on Kumogakure's side, return to the rear and enter defense mode to prevent Kumogakuре from invading. For the Iwagakure ninjas in Konoha, they must intercept them at all costs. They must escape 5 tails to Konoha and recover them. No matter how hard it is to kill him, he must not let Konoha take 5 tails away. For tails, Jinchuriki was ordered to leave the village and rush to the battlefield. This directive is decisive and resolute. And no matter which angle you look at it, it is undoubtedly correct. While trying their best to intercept 5 tails, they also prepared for the possibility of Kumogakuре raiding the Earth Kingdom, trying their best to recover the losses while not being taken advantage of. But can Iwagakure really be able to recover the losses? Ruohuo doesn't make any comments. Anyway, his current gains are indeed quite big. After establishing the chakra link with 5 tails, in addition to gaining the ability to mentally communicate with 5 tails, Ruohuo just received another prompt from the system. Your chakra reserve attribute has been increased to a temporary. Blood inheritance limit, boil style, activated. How to obtain gift from chakra. Trigger the little Vulcan passive, all your escape skills will be replaced by flames, and the attribute fusion is successful. Your flames can be attached with corrosion effects, need to be activated through 5 tails chakra. Corrosion special effect, your fire style can continue to cause damage after hitting the target, and the duration depends on the amount of 5 tails chakra. Acquire S-level skills, boil style, monster power. Boil style, strange power, raise 5 tails chakra to the boiling point, which can temporarily increase all physical attributes by a huge amount. Does it still have this effect? Ruohuo, I didn't expect that blood succession limit and little fire god would have such a fusion effect. The corrosive effect, isn't this what Amaterasu means? Fire style is direct damage, burning the target with high temperature, causing damage. The strongest form of fire style Amaterasu has the highest temperature and can adhere to the target until the target is burned. And his boil style version of fire style, rounded up, is just a little Amaterasu. Then find a way to get Sage mode, Amaterasu's flame artificial version, isn't this it? Boil style, strange power. No wonder humans want tailed beasts. Ruohuo was not only happy but also a little sighing. Human beings are indeed greedy. Sealing tailed beasts into the body to gain power is definitely not the initial cooperation method between humans and tailed beasts. The normal plot should be that humans and tailed beasts have had a honeymoon period for a while. Tailed beasts are willing to lend their power to humans and help them. But the humans who gained power wanted to take over the power of the tailed beasts, so gradually, gradually. Five Tails is coming this way. Stay hidden. Listen, try to hold off for a while, support will arrive soon. Wait until it gets closer. It's now. When Five Tails was about to pass through a canyon, with a loud roar, the Iwagakure ninjas who were ambushing here suddenly appeared. Earth-style, castle wall. The Iwagakures jointly used Earth-style to create a huge earth wall, which first blocked the direction of Five Tails, and then sealed the entrance to the valley. Taking advantage of the terrain and the mountains on both sides, the Iwagakure ninja actually built an oversized Earth-style cage for Five Tails. This is not over yet. Barriers class, shouted again. There is also a barriers class? Ruohuo was a little surprised. Iwagakure. I really can't bear to part with Five Tails. Hold on, Indra. Five Tails Kokua whispered a reminder in the connection with his mind, and his speed increased instead of decreasing. He puffed out steam, lowered his head slightly to reveal the four horns on his head, and headed straight for the earth wall. Boom. This seemingly tall and towering earthen wall was as fragile as tissue paper in front of Five Tails. Five Tails rushed out of the blockade, and the barrier squad didn't even have time to activate barriers. I hope Orochimaru-sensei won't take this path later. Ruohuo glanced behind him and thought to himself. It seems that it is impossible to find Amaterasu, a young Iwagakure experimenter on the road, and Five Tails Kokua seems not to want to give him this opportunity. But we're almost at the border of the fire country, right? I don't know what they will think when they see Five Tails rushing over. Ruohuo raised his eyebrows. You shouldn't do it directly, right? Don't tell me, it seems really possible. Anyone who sees a tailed beast from an enemy village rushing towards their own village will quickly resist. Then will he seek refuge from danger? Or will he act in self-defense? Or will he purge the espionage organization in accordance with the law? It's so hard to choose, hee. But Ruohuo obviously thought too much. Orochimaru is the disciple of the third generation, the man who will inherit the fourth Hokage. How could there be no emergency remote contact with the Hokage building? Jiraiya also has a little frog. The moment Wakahui rode Five Tails towards Konoha. A small snake had already squirmed out of Orochimaru's mansion and walked through the streets and alleys, avoiding the hunting of wild cats and dogs, as well as the big feet of humans. Finally climbed onto the desk in Hokage's office. Third generation, who was working with a crystal ball, suddenly looked tense. This is bad. Something happened to Orochimaru. Episode 48. When the news returns to Konoha. This is Orochimaru's emergency contact information. Only in extremely urgent special circumstances would you contact him in this way. Whenever Orochimaru is on a high-risk mission, the third generation will try to stay in the Hokage office. Even if he leaves on important matters, Umbu will be asked to wait here to prevent him from missing the information sent back by Orochimaru in an emergency. Or a signal for help. Third generation quickly vacated the table, pulled out a scroll that had been prepared long ago from under the desk, and unfolded it on the table. The little snake immediately climbed onto the scroll, and after squirming several times, left several special marks on the paper. White Fang has been rescued, encountered, Five Tails Jinchuriki. Third generation was stunned. How could this kid Orochimaru be involved in the White Fang's mission? Isn't that a B-level rescue mission? Five Tails Jinchuriki, encountered. But now was not the time to surprise him for too long. The third generation looked into the air and shouted, "Go and inform Inarakacho and the Minato team. Quick!" No one responded, and a figure quickly left the Hokage building. The little snake continued to squirm, and third generation kept its eyes on it, staring at it while deciphering it at the same time. Wakeo-kun, capture, Five Tails. Third generation was stunned for a moment, rubbed his eyes, and looked again. He still didn't understand, so he quickly took out his glasses and found the codebook with Orochimaru. Quickly compared and redeciphered, the content is still consistent. Ruohuo, captured, Five Tails? So Orochimaru was already a little delirious from the dangers he encountered. That kid is only 7 years old. How is it possible to capture Five Tails? This must be a distress signal. It is impossible for the Five Tails Jinchuriki to act alone. Orochimaru may have been surrounded by the Five Tails Jinchuriki and the Iwagakure ninja. What on earth does this kid, Orochimaru, want to tell me? Concern leads to confusion. For a moment, third generation really couldn't figure out what Orochimaru wanted to express with this concise and clear information. In fact, it means literally. Quick, support, direction of Iwagakure. This time I understood third generation, but only half of it. I understand the quick support, but what about the coordinates? Iwagakure direction? Where exactly? That's it. Third generation waved his hand, notify Jonin class to assemble. Chirp. Onomatopoeia for the sound of an eagle, please refer to the first step of the Chunin assessment for details. As soon as the signal for Jonin's gathering was given, several ninjas rushed to the Hokage office. But they are not here to gather, they are here to report quickly. Third generation lord. A large number of Iwagakure launch a surprise attack, the number exceeds 5,000. Third generation Misama. Iwagakure has dispatched the Jinchuriki, the number of tails is 5, and they have crossed the border. Third generation lord. Iwagakure has dispatched Jinchuriki, with an unknown number of tails, approaching Konoha. One emergency battle report after another exploded in Hokage's office. What surprised these ninjas was that their third generation members were already dressed in military uniforms, wearing the armor of that era. As expected of third generation Sama, you have indeed noticed what Iwagakure is doing. Explore again. Third generation shouted loudly. Figures gathered together quickly, and in just a few minutes, all the Jonin on standby in Konoha village were assembled. The battle reports from the front line and Orochimaru's urgent message were completely echoed at this moment. Obviously, Orochimaru sent the message in such a hurry just to remind Konoha. As for Iwagakure's hasty and sudden attack, is it also related to Orochimaru, and whether Orochimaru is encountering something unexpected now? Everyone. The hope for peace has been completely shattered by Inoki. Third generation suppressed the worries in his heart and shouted loudly. He must act tough now, he is not only Orochimaru's teacher, but also Konoha's shadow. More than 5,000 ninjas were dispatched to the Iwagakure front line, with the Five Tails Jinchuriki taking the lead, and they have crossed the border of the Land of Fire. Inoki obviously wanted to take the opportunity to break through Konoha, but he underestimated our will. Third generation looked up and shouted, we will defeat all invading enemies and drive back the ninjas of Iwagakure. Yes. There was no unnecessary response. The ninjas with different styles knelt down on one knee. They were clearly distinguished. On the left was the Jonin class and on the right was the Hokage's Umbu personal guard. Among the ninjas who gathered in this emergency, there was not a single figure with the Uchiha clan emblem. Iwagakure's entire army has launched an attack, and Five Tails is almost rushing to their doorstep. Of course, third generation must take the lead. Team Minato, SEAL Squad, and I will attack Five Tails head-on. The third generation commander gave the order. Yes. Minato accepted. Yes. The captain of the sealing team took the order. Shikaku. Haichi. Third generation shouted. Yes, too. Set up a defense line in the shortest possible time, bypass Five Tails, and rush to the front line. Yes. Whoosh whoosh. The situation was urgent. Nara Shikaku immediately rushed to the front line with a large number of ninjas after receiving the order. Except for Umbu and third generation, there were only 4 people left at the scene. They are the 3 members of the Minato team, Namikaze Minato, Akamichi Dingzhou, and Aburame Shirwei. Refer to Lost Tower for configuration. As well as a red-haired woman. Master Hokage. Where am I? The red-haired woman looked very excited. Third generation was silent for half a second. Kushina, you are Konoha's last line of defense. If I hadn't been able to stop Five Tails. Konoha, please. Whoosh whoosh. Third generation set out with his men. The red-haired woman stamped her foot, the same words again, so annoying. Faced with Iwagakure's large-scale raid, Konoha's ninjas mobilized one after another. Nara Shikaku used the shortest time to plan a total of 13 forward routes for the Konoha ninja troops. Each route bypasses Five Tails' forward route and refers to the forward speed of Iwagakure's army to ensure that Konoha can reach the front line in the shortest time and can block it as soon as it arrives. Moreover, the diffuse advance can also prevent surprise attacks by Iwagakure's squad to the greatest extent. The hairline of the Nara clan is generally backward, which is not unreasonable. The third generation even took the lead, personally leading Umbu and Minato's sealing team to head straight for Five Tails. Is Inoki crazy? The Hokage office is guarded by 3 elders. The third Hokage went to the battlefield, they needed to defend the rear of Konoha. An attack of this scale, with all the Jinchuriki deployed. This is not like a feint attack. They are all ninjas who have lived from another era to the present. The three elders are still very calm. And at this moment, the person who directly caused all these events suddenly stopped on the way back to Konoha. Hey! The white-haired old man in front. Are you going to Konoha too? We're just on the way, I'll take you with me. Episode 49. Huh. Genjutsu is so strong, I will solve it again. Time goes back to 5 minutes ago. White Fang has just experienced the most important choice in his life. Tasks and companions. In the world of ninjas, there is its own set of rules. Every item in this set of rules has the words mission first written on it. But he chose the latter. Abandon the mission and rescue your companions. The price may be high, but White Fang has no regrets. He can also feel the heartbeat of his companions, which is very important to White Fang. He is very happy. At least it was like this 5 minutes ago. White Fang never expected that Iwagakure would be so mad that he sent Five Tails Jinchuriki to pursue him because of his attempt to destroy Canopy Bridge. It seems that you have to walk the rest of the way on your own, boys. White Fang finally stopped. He had no intention of returning to Konoha. Honestly, it's an honor to be able to carry out this mission with you. Although we failed, it doesn't matter, we still have a chance. White Fang pulled out the short sword and looked at the huge beast running behind him, his sharp eyes filled with determination. Let's go back. Leave this to me. I will delay enough for you. One day, you will complete the task that we failed to complete, blow up that bridge, and then let my son scatter my ashes on it. Promise me. At this moment, even though he was exhausted physically and mentally, White Fang could feel unparalleled power. Looking at the backs of his companions who were reluctant to leave, White Fang smiled with relief. I'm sorry, Kakashi. If you want to defeat that little brat from the Uchiha family, you may have to rely on yourself. White Fang makes the final break with the only softness in his heart. That behemoth is getting closer and closer, and every time it leaps, the earth trembles. Gudong. The tired White Fang did feel a little pressure. Five Tails, is this the oppressive feeling of Five Tails? White tightened the knife in his hand. His knife is very sharp and can easily cut the enemy's throat. But facing this big guy. Hey! The white-haired old man in front. Amidst the shaking of the earth, a childish voice sounded. It was a bit blurry and couldn't be heard clearly, but White Fang was shocked. Is there anyone else nearby? Ordinary people. White Fang looked around and quickly searched for the figure. He didn't want ordinary people to die in the aftermath. Are you going to Konoha too? We're just on the way, I'll take you with me. The voice sounded again. Huh? White Fang's expression gradually became weird. He heard it clearly this time, but the key was, the sound seemed to come from above Five Tails. Look carefully. There really is a little dot on top. Standing next to Five Tails' horns, you really can't tell it unless you look carefully. And this voice, seems familiar? He seemed to have heard it not long ago, yes, in Konoha, in the Hokage building. It's the Uchiha kid who shouted the will of fire, but used fire style to send the ninjas guarding Konoha building to the hospital. How could he be standing on Five Tails' head? Genjutsu. I see, it can make me fall for it without even realizing it. Is this the power of Five Tails? White Fang sneered, how could he, who has experienced hundreds of battles, not be able to distinguish between reality and genjutsu? You use this to confuse a father? Any father who can't stand your confusion should at least look like Kakashi. Solution. White Fang closed his eyes. Huh? It's useless? Oh, what a strong genjutsu, try again. What is this human doing, Indra? Five Tails was a little confused, is he preparing some ninjutsu? No, he is saying goodbye to his past self. Ruohuo patted Five Tails' horns to signal the brakes. Five Tails used all four legs to stop the strong inertia of its body and plowed two well-defined ravines on the ground. Finally, it stopped steadily in front of White Fang, and the dust kicked up covered White Fang's face. White Fang, who did not feel the murderous intention, was very confident in his judgment and was still working hard to remove genjutsu. He soon choked and coughed, and when he was about to open his eyes and retreat, he saw that the huge Five Tails had lowered his body and lowered his head. The copper bell-like eyes looked directly at him, and white steam came out of the nostrils and hit his face. Gudong. Even White Fang felt a little thirsty at the moment. And this time. It turns out it's you, Kakashi's uncle. Ruohuo looked like he had just recognized you. I saw you on the first day of school, uncle. Are you going back to Konoha too? This. White Fang was a little confused. He really didn't feel the killing intention. Isn't this Genjutsu? But how could this little devil of Uchiha? Are you, Wakawi-kun? The first-year class president who defeated Kakashi? White Fang's intelligence is indeed a bit behind. He has basically been performing tasks on the front line for the past 2 months. Yeah, but I'm a Chunin now. I just came back from a rescue mission. Ruohuo pointed to Five Tails at his feet. Let me introduce, this is my new partner, Five Tails. I met this guy during my mission, and he tried to stop me from destroying the Jinmubi bridge, so I defeated him. Then Five Tails ran out and became my companion. Ruohuo mentioned Taiyan's body and wildly hinted that he helped destroy the Kanabi bridge. Only then did White Fang realize that the characteristics of the corpse. Why did it seem to be the Five Tails Jinchuriki of a Wagakure? Unlike Konoha, Konoha's 9 Tails Jinchuriki information is top secret. The third generation project never lets that person leave the village, and the intelligence information is protected airtight. But Awagakure and other villages are obviously much more relaxed in this regard. Although they did not publicize the Jinchuriki's intelligence, they frequently sent them to the battlefield in an attempt to create a suppressive local advantage. White Fang recognized the identity of Hanqian Five Tails Jinchuriki. And it becomes increasingly clear that he must have been hit by Genjutsu. A kid who had not yet graduated from the ninja school destroyed the Kanabi bridge in such a defense, also killed the Five Tails Jinchuriki, and got the 5 tails? As expected of a tailed beast. Such a ridiculous Genjutsu, but I can't find a way to solve it. White Fang tilted his head and chuckled mockingly. Then let's get rid of you Genjutsu brat first. A cold light flashed in White Fang's eyes, and he was about to leave the next second. Roar. The roar of Five Tails shook the sky, like a physical sound wave accompanied by billowing white smoke, directly sending White Fang flying away with his knife. Damn humans. Five Tails' voice was filled with disgust. Indra, are you sure he will be of use to you? Ruohuo was silent for half a second. Probably, he's just not very smart. Well, people who choose to commit suicide are basically not very smart. Episode 50. I won't let you hurt my companions. Well. White Fang gritted his teeth and covered his ears tightly, and at the same time he had to withstand the scorching heat brought by the high-temperature steam. But soon, White Fang felt his body being caught again, and then after a flash, he landed firmly on the ground. Are you okay, White Fang-senpai? Minato asked with concern. Water, Minato? White Fang felt his ears ringing, but he still heard Minato's voice. I haven't had sonic shock for too long. I didn't expect to see you here, White Fang. The old voice was a little cold, but it gave White Fang an unparalleled sense of security. Master Hokage, why are you here? White Fang was shocked, and was slightly moved. Sure enough, Konoha received its own call for help, and even the third generation personally led a team to come to support. Now is not the time to talk about this. Third generation stared at the behemoth in the distance. We must deal with the Five Tails Jinchuriki first. We cannot let the Five Tails Jinchuriki threaten the village. Yes. White Fang stood up and patted Minato's shoulder to indicate that he was fine. Looking back at Five Tails who had already stood up, White Fang secretly gritted his teeth, moved his shoulders, and said, I just fought against Five Tails and discovered some brand new information. Five Tails Jinchuriki may have mastered a certain amount of Genjutsu. Although the content of Genjutsu is outrageous, the effect is realistic. Although I just discovered it, I can't get rid of it. White Fang looked extremely serious. Everyone, please be careful. Everyone looked shocked. Five Tails Jinchuriki still controls such a powerful Genjutsu? Genjutsu, even White Fang-senpai is helpless. This is going to be tricky. Minato mused. Instead, the usually taciturn Aburame Jiwei stood up. If it's Genjutsu, I can help. I have recently cultivated a new batch of bugs called phantom-breaking bugs, which need to be attached to you. Small private design. Aburame Jiwei stretched out a hand, and an insect the size of an adult dung beetle appeared in the palm of his hand. The bugs will absorb a small amount of chakra. If you feel hit by Genjutsu, the bugs will forcibly disrupt your chakra. It may be a little painful, but it is absolutely effective. Be careful, Indra, I feel the malice of these humans. Five Tails' tone was still disgusting. Well, I feel it too. Ruohuo formed a seal silently and called out Shadow Clone. Although the reality is right in front of them, it is often difficult for people to believe it if it exceeds their understanding. What's more, this world also has the setting of Jinjutsu, which can find a better haven for people's ignorance. But killing 5 tails Jinchuriki and capturing the tailed beast at the age of 7 does seem a bit outrageous. Ruohuo scratched his head, suddenly understanding White Feng's mood just now. He gave up the mission and took great risks, so he rushed back to Konoha with his companions. As a result, a classmate from Kakashi's class appeared halfway, riding a 5 tails and carrying a 5 tails Jinchuriki, telling him that the funeral had been taken care of, and the Kanabi bridge had been bombed, so there was no need to worry. Except for Orochimaru, no one seems to think that this is not a Jinjutsu. But the system has given me so much, what can I do? With 3 Magatama plus Super Fire style buff, Hanta is not yet a complete Jinchuriki. There is a saying, if I were a grandma, I would be able to win. As for 5 tails, this is a mount he got based on his strength. 5 tails recognizes Indra Chakra. What can he do? They're coming, Indra. 5 tails Kokuo reminded, and began to increase the temperature of the chakra. Steam was continuously sprayed from the nostrils, officially entering the battle state. Then let's have a big fight. Kokuo. Ruohuo clapped his hands and his eyes became more and more excited. As long as the other party takes the initiative to attack, he can defend himself. Roar. 5 tails roared loudly again. Everyone, it's time to go. Third generation formed a seal with one hand, and the monkey demon moved forward, long. The monkey demon stretched out hundreds of meters and pierced 5 tails like a javelin. Get away first. Ruohuo ordered. 5 tails Kokuo immediately gave up the idea of using his horns to drive away the monkey demon and started running toward the left. Don't even think about running away. The third generation shouted, swinging the monkey demon towards 5 tails, and shouted at the same time, Minato. Yes. Minato was already ready, with his left and right hands on his 2 teammates. The Flying Thunder God activated and appeared directly at the head of the monkey demon. Although the current Minato is not yet the famous Golden Flash, he is only afraid of the enemy. At least he has mastered the Flying Thunder God technique. Their current purpose is to temporarily restrain 5 tails, and then let the sealing squad leader 5 tails and Jinchuriki forcibly seal it. Don't let them come up, Kokuo, sprint. Ruohuo ordered again with his mind. Whoosh whoosh. The 3 of them activated their teleportation as soon as they transferred, trying to land on 5 tails' huge body. But 5 tails suddenly charged up its legs and accelerated again to avoid the 3 of them. Hold on to me. Minato immediately threw out a Flying Thunder God kunai with Sword of Ninja Love engraved on it. The kunai barely caught up with 5 tails, and then launched the Flying Thunder God again. Whoosh. Minato's team flashed again, this time in the sky behind 5 tails. Minato grabbed the Flying Thunder God kunai, while Akamichi Tingza grabbed 2 teammates and swung them towards 5 tails below. Go for it. Secret technique, insect pest. Aburame Jiwei released a large number of parasitic insects with his hands, swarming towards 5 tails like black smoke. Minato's attack is simple and crude. Chakra condenses in his hand and expands rapidly. Helix Super will dance skybreaking divine strike. Isn't this the big ball Rasengan? Ruohuo's eyebrows twitched, but he didn't dare to be careless at all. Although the current name of this technique is a bit out of place, its power is still pretty good. If it hits 5 tails, I won't let you hurt my friends. Shadow Clone 1 rushed to Minato and vowed to protect Kokuo to the death. Why are there kids? Uchiha, Sharingan, or 3 Magatama? Minato was shocked, and immediately remembered what White Feng Senpai said, and realized that this was most likely a Jinjutsu. Very outrageous Jinjutsu. This 5 tails couldn't have been ridden by this boy, right? Has 5 tails Jinchuriki changed? But he still wears Konoha's forehead protector. But the key to Zaiwaizang's phantom-breaking insect didn't respond either. Could it be that 5 tails Jinjutsu can confuse even insects? Thoughts flashed through Minato's mind. After all, little Taiyang was not willing to do anything to the child, but he didn't have the only choice. The Flying Thunder God kunai in his mouth fell, and Minato activated the Flying Thunder God on the spot, but his body forcibly changed its posture. From Shadow Clone number 1 facing Wakahui, to Shadow Clone number 1 facing Wakahui upside down, he even hit the big ball Rasengan on 5 tails. Roar. After all, it is a ninjutsu that can break mountains and rocks, and Five Tails immediately screamed in pain. Did it work? Minato was a little surprised. He quickly turned to look at the Uchiha boy just now, only to see that his eyes were red and his hands were forming seals. Why are you hurting my friends? Damn it. You are not Konoha's ninjas at all. Then bear the wrath of my will of fire. Shadow Clone inhaled sharply, fire style, extinguishing fire.